Hello and welcome to church. I want to wish you a very happy new year. I tell you what, it is so good to be back in the Ivy building, and we're streaming live into the church that meets in your home. If you're tuning in for the first time or whether you're a regular with us, I just want to say a massive welcome and thank you so much for joining us today. And my name is Pete. I'm on the staff team here and I'm going to be helping you guide us through this morning. Now, as always, at the start of this new year, we see these times online, not just as something that we watch, but something we get to participate in. This is community that we're doing right now. And so I'd love it, if at all possible, whatever platform you're watching it on, to give us a comment. Why not say hello? Why not wish each other a happy new year in the comments? Click those likes, click those hearts. We want to know that you're on board, that you're engaged with us this morning. This is community that we're being a part of this morning. Now, with it being our first Sunday back, if you're a regular to Ivy, you know that on the first Sunday of the year, we will hear what Ivy's year of is. Now, if you're new to Ivy or whether you're checking us out for the first time, first of all, massive welcome. But secondly, every year as a church, Anthony, our senior leader, he kind of seeks God and asks God, is there a word that you have for us for this year? A word that's going to kind of give guidance, a word that we can hold fast to, that can be our focus for the year, that is really going to help us journey as a community through the year for the season that we're in. And so many of you know last year was our year of focus. In the previous years, we've had things like the year of hope, the year of prayer, the year of acceleration, the year of equipping. And through my time at being at Ivory, every word that's been brought for the year has been so spot on for the season that we're in and has been so formative for the growth of the community here at Ivy. And so I'm excited. I mean, I know it already, and it's going to be a good one. So I'm expectant, and I hope that you are too, as we hear from Anthony a little later on. Now, New Year is usually a time that feels like a new beginning, a fresh start. There's going to be a lot of anticipation of setting new goals and new dreams about the year ahead. Now, I don't want to go into this new year with simply having rose-tinted glasses on. Last year was a tough year for everyone, and more so for some people than others. And for some people, you'd have leapt into 2021 thinking, I don't care what happened in 2020, this is a new year. But for other people, you may have felt like you just limped across the line a little bit. But this morning, before we worship, I just found it interesting. You know, on the 1st of January, I just spent a little bit of time, and I was thinking back on the previous year. I was thinking, man, that was a tough year in so many ways. But the more I kind of searched and the more I kind of spent some time thinking, the more I saw God's fingerprints all over it. In some of the most tough times that we as a nation have been through, things personally and as a church, God's fingerprints were all over it. His faithfulness, his goodness, his provision of things that we needed, his comfort, his peace. God was there throughout all of it. And I was thinking, you know, one of the ways in which I experienced God most tangibly in my life last year was through being connected to a community, through being connected to this community here at Ivy. And I just want to kind of encourage but also challenge us at the beginning of this year. You know, one of the best things you can do is to get connected and stay connected, of being in community, to have people around you that will champion you, encourage you, that will love you and will serve you and help you in whatever way you need. And you know what? One of the best ways we can do that, first of all, being a part of our gatherings here on a Sunday, but secondly, maybe if you're into making resolutions or doing something new in the new year, why not look at joining a grow group? If you're new to Ivy, our grow groups are simply our small groups that meet throughout the week in different places in the city. At the moment, we're meeting online, but I tell you what, for me last year, it was one of the highlights of my week. It was a lifeline and a source of joy and encouragement for so many. And so I want to encourage you and to challenge you, even if you're not part of a group, to get plugged in and let that kind of community be something that gives you hope and encouragement throughout this year. Now, we're going to worship together as we sing in a few moments. But before we do, we're just going to watch a short video, which is going to give a little bit of a taste about what Anthony's going to bring in our message a little later on.
If you tried to describe what God is like, it could be difficult or daunting. But when the people who wrote the Bible pondered the mystery of God, they consistently described God's character in this way: compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, overflowing with loyal love and faithfulness. The very first word used in this description of God is compassionate, or in Hebrew, rachum. This word also appears as a noun, rachamim, or compassion. And what's fascinating is that both of these words are related to the Hebrew word for womb, rechem. So compassion in the Hebrew Bible is centered on a person's core, and the word invites us to imagine a mother's tender feelings for her vulnerable infant. So rahum is a word that conveys intense emotion. Sometimes it's even translated as deeply moved, like in the story of King Solomon, who meets two women who've just given birth. One of their babies sadly dies, but then both women claim that the baby still living is theirs. As a test, Solomon says to cut the baby in two and give each mother a half. And the baby's real mother is deeply moved. She would rather the other woman take her baby than see her child die. And it's her compassion that reveals that she's the true mother. But rahum isn't just an emotional word. It also involves action. And surprisingly, the word is used most often to describe God's actions, motivated by his emotions. Like when the Israelites are suffering and oppressed in Egypt, God hears their cries and is compelled by his compassion, his rachamim, to rescue them. Then, as the Israelites travel through the dangerous wilderness, they're hungry and thirsty, and God is Rahum, caring for them as his own child. He provides everything they need: food, water, and clothing, as he personally guides them. So it's no surprise that when Yahweh reveals his character to the Israelites in the wilderness, he begins by saying he's compassionate. But despite Yahweh's continual rachamim, the Israelites turn away from him time and again. They reject Yahweh's compassion and instead give their allegiance to other gods. And rather than showing compassion to each other, they do violence. And their rebellion results in exile, and they're scattered among the nations. And it's in this dark moment in Israel's story that we come to the book of Isaiah, where Yahweh compares himself to a mother full of rachamim toward her baby. He says, "Can a mother forget her nursing child, or have no compassion or rachamim on the child of her womb? Even if she forgets, I will not forget you." God is full of motherly compassion, and he will rescue his people. And as you read further in Isaiah, you realize that God is going to do this by entering into the suffering of humanity. And this points forward to a time when Jesus comes on the scene. He is Yahweh's deep compassion become human. In Greek, the word compassion is oiktirmos. And as Jesus embraces the sick and cares for the outcast, he is deeply moved by human suffering. Jesus compares himself to a mother hen using her wings to shield her chicks from danger as he gathers people into his embrace. And in the ultimate expression of oiktirmos, Jesus is moved by compassion to enter into humanity's suffering, into death itself, to rescue and bring us near to God. And it's this same life of compassion that Jesus calls his followers to imitate, allowing ourselves to be moved by the pain of others, to embrace the hurting, and to participate in relieving suffering in the world. In this way, we too can embody the compassion of Yahweh, or in Jesus' words, be compassionate, just as your Father is compassionate. Now you can see how fitting it is that compassionate is the first word God uses to describe himself. So when we're in pain or see others suffering, we can be certain that God is deeply moved to respond, and that he's there to meet us with his deep compassion.
Good morning, Ivy family. Hope you're well. We're just going to start this year by just worshiping the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords. As Pete said, it was a difficult year last year, but we believe that Jesus is our Savior and is our King, and we're going to start by worshiping him this morning. So.
Who can stop the Lord Almighty? Who can stop the Lord Almighty? Yeah. Who can stop the Lord Almighty? And who can stop the Lord Almighty? Yeah. Who can stop the Lord Almighty? And who can stop the Lord? Our God is the Lion of Judah. He's roaring with power and fighting our battles. And every knee will bow before Him. Our God is the Lamb that was slain for the sins of the world. His blood breaks the chains. Every knee will bow. The Lion and the Lamb, every knee will bow before let mercy fall on me. Everyone needs forgiveness, the kindness of a Savior, the hope of the nations. Yes, He is. And Savior, He can move the mountains. My God is mighty to save. He is mighty to save and forever. Author of salvation, He rose and conquered the grave. Jesus conquered the grave. Oh, yeah. Shine your light and let the whole world see. We're singing for the glory of the risen King. Yeah, Jesus, shine your light and let the whole world see. We're singing for the glory of the risen King. Oh, Jesus, shine your light and let the whole world see. The glory of the risen King. And Jesus, shine your light and let the whole world see. We're singing for the glory of the risen King. And Savior, He can move the mountains. My God is mighty to save. He is mighty to save forever. Author of salvation, He rose and conquered the grave. Jesus conquered the grave. And Savior, He can move the mountains. My God is mighty to save. He is mighty to save. Conquered the grave. Jesus conquered the grave. No one above you. No one above you.
And we're about to set your challenge for this week. But first, let's have a look at what you've been sending in. Week, we've been talking about Nehemiah and working together.
Now our challenge to you this week is to build or make something with your family. It can be something out of Lego or building blocks or any material you have at home. Don't forget to send in pictures of what you've created together so we can have a look next week.
Here's what we created.
Bye!
fantastic. You know, one of the highlights for so many people, including myself, was IKTV. It has been brilliant. So if you haven't yet checked it out, even if you are not a kid or a child, you need to check it out. It is fantastic. Our children's workers, our team, have done a fantastic job of resourcing and serving our children so well. If you do watch it and you haven't yet subscribed, head over to YouTube and hit the subscribe button, and there you get all the latest news, updates, and episodes. And why not share it? I know so many people who have shared it with friends, family, people from their schools, and they have loved it. We are going to have an opportunity right now to continue in our worship as we have an opportunity to give back to God. But before we do, myself, like many people at the start of this year I've decided to do the Bible in 1 year. And so there's various reading programs out there where through the whole of the year we get to cover the whole of the story of the Bible. And my first reading was Genesis chapters 1 and 2 and a few others. But it's interesting. I was just reflecting. You know, one of the first commands that God gives to humankind, in fact, you could say like one of the first purposes that God has for you and for I here on this earth is to be good stewards of what he's given us. I mean, for Adam and Eve in the story of creation, like he told them to kind of be good stewards of creation, of the animals, of all that he had given. And the same is true for us today. I mean, the Bible says that every good gift comes from God. And I just wonder, just in this moment, to have a think with everything that God has given you, that he's given me, and what has God entrusted you with? I mean, to be a steward doesn't mean that you own it. It means that you take care of it, that you steward what you have been given well. It's part of our worship. It's how we honor God. People he's put in our lives, the time that God has given us, your job, your family, your friends, your home, your community. God has given us so much, and his call on you and I is that we be good stewards of that. And of course, God has also blessed us with the finances, with our money as well. And you know what? Money is one of the things that can take hold of our heart so easily. There is a way that we can honor God and worship God with our finances as well, and that is with being a good steward. And like I said at the beginning, many people at the start of the new year, you have new goals and new dreams, and you might set resolutions in order to deepen, but also in a way that we can worship God more fully, more faithfully, and for obedience, is to ask the question, how can I steward better what you have given me? And particularly in regards to our finances as well. And so I just want to ask you, for you today, what would it look like for you to be the best steward of your finances that you could be, that would honor God, that would bring worship? This isn't about kind of how much you give to God or what someone else you know is doing with their finances. God has entrusted you with what he's given to you. And it's completely different for someone else. So ask yourself and search and say, God, how can I best steward what you have given to me? And for some people in regards to our finances this year, it might be that It might be that you save well. It might be that you try and get out of debt. And for other people, it might be a case of how can I be more generous with what God has given me? In regards to steward would be to give to God for the first time. For other people, it could be maybe I need to think about start giving regularly for the first time. For others, it might be to do with tithing or giving above and beyond. But the question is for all of us, how can I steward well what God has given me that gives him the most glory and the most honor? If you want to give back to God and to our website, ivychurch.org, and all the details are on there. And especially if you want to think about giving on a regular basis, you can find all the information on how to do that right there. I'm excited. I'm going to welcome up Anthony, who's going to speak to us, and as he announces, Anthony.
Cheers, Pete. Thanks, mate. Great job. So, I'm going to get straight into this because I've got quite a lot. Ask you to engage fully with it, to maybe write some notes down, to try and avoid all kinds of other, hear a word from the Lord for this year. And I believe this is going to be, for us generally, but for some people, it's going to be such a specific word that you've needed and that you're going to need in the year. A whole chapter from Jonah. And again, I know some of you might be thinking, well, why would we go straight into reading this word from the Lord? It sounds a bit of a negative word, but this time you're going to be guessing. Oh, I bet I know what the word of the Lord is. Maybe you've been trying to do that for a while. Let's see if you can guess. I'm going to be reading through, and it may or may not be in this passage. So keep listening, keep guessing. If you hear you, so I won't know whether you got it right or not. Okay. The word of the Lord came to Jonah, son of Amittai. Go to the great city of Nineveh and preach against it, because its wickedness has come up before me. But Jonah ran away from the Lord and headed for Tarshish. He went down to Joppa, where he found a ship bound for that. Great wind on the sea, and such a violent storm arose that the ship threatened to break it up. All of the sailors were afraid. Each cried out to his own God. Then they threw the cargo into the sea to lighten the ship. But when you sleep, get up and call on your God. Maybe he'll take notice of us so that we will not perish. Who's responsible for this calamity? They cast lots, and the lot fell on Jonah. So they asked him, tell us, who's responsible for making all this trouble for us? What kind of work do you do? Where do you come from? This terrified them, and they asked, what have you done? They knew that he was running away from the Lord because he'd already told them so. The sea was getting rougher and rougher, so they asked him, what should we do to make the sea calm down for us? Pick me up, throw me into the sea, he replied, and it will become. Instead, the men did their best to row back to land, but they couldn't, for the sea grew wilder than ever before. Then they cried out to the Lord, please, Lord, Yahweh, do not let this man die for taking, do not have done as you pleased. Then they took Jonah and threw him overboard, and the raging sea grew calm. At this, the men greatly feared the Lord and offered a sacrifice to the Lord, to Yahweh, and made vows to him. Now, the Lord 3 days and 3 nights. So, Ivy people wait with prayerful expectation for today, because in his great faithfulness every year for the last 12 years, as we've heard, he's given me a word for the year. And you might wonder why, as we start out with Jonah being told to go the Lord, and he runs from the word that God wants to give him. Jonah, whose name means dove, really doesn't want to go there, thank you. So he flies off in exactly the opposite direction. Go to Nineveh. Was it because he didn't want to be the bearer of bad news? See, if you heard Jonah, if you in Nineveh, maybe put a sign around your neck saying, repent, news bearer, not doom monger. And when we read the rest of the story, we find out that was not the reason that Jonah, even though it sounded like bad news. So, was it that he didn't want to go to a bad place? Nineveh was in what is now northern Iraq and was the most impressive city in the world. Warlike citizens who loved to cruelly conquer and humiliate and even torture. But it wasn't that Jonah was scared of them. When you read the story, and when we go on, we're going to go in depth in this. If you join one of our grow groups, we just start up on the shores at Nineveh, and he delivers the confrontational judgment message, both barrels right in their faces. 40 days, and then Nineveh will be destroyed. People. So did he go the other way because it was a bad journey? Jonah, is the son of Amittai and the truth about God. He's been raised to know we Jews know the truth. We have the truth. We have God. We have the temple. We have the commandments. and all the other nations are deluded. Jonah loves just to stay. He's happy to stay in Israel, to be one of the chosen people with the law, with the temple, and he's a choir there in Jerusalem. If you read in 2 Kings, you can read that he prophesied there, and the king of Israel actually listened and did what Jonah says. So, he's got a good number. And go to Nineveh. And Jonah doesn't argue. He doesn't complain it's too far to go. He just goes as far as he can possibly get in the opposite direction. See, we might look at a map and figure out that Jonah... Instead, though, he gets in a boat that's headed for Tarshish, which the Jewish people saw as being the place furthest west, the furthest west that you could go in the opposite direction. Far west as you can possibly go. Some scholars say it was Spain. Some even think it was Britain. He's trying to get away. He's trying to get away and outrun the call of God. He knows he can't really escape from God geographically, but he's running from the people, from the place of destiny. He's trying to make it up himself rather than submit to what God says. So this year, as we look ahead, the Lord has got a message for you, but the world wants to tell you something different. It wants to tell you that you are at the center of everything, that you get to self-select your own preferences and interests, even though everybody else's opinion is different. And own way. But God says, no, I created the heavens and the earth. I'm sovereign. I have a plan for your life. Follow me. Going to go into another time of worship. We're going to sing a song again that we were going to sing. I'm going to say that we want to hear him and we want him to lead us. Okay? So let's make that decision to follow him and me do as we now focus in on worship together.
Trust you, Lord, sing it again. Spirit, break out. Break all walls down. Spirit, break out. In heaven, come down. Our Father, all of heaven roars your name, sing louder. Let this place erupt with praise. Can you? Oh, sing that again. And our Father, let this place erupt with praise. Can you hear it? The sound of heaven touching earth. Oh, the sound of heaven. We want to see your spirit here. Break all walls down. We need to break out. Heaven come down.
to pray into that. We ask that you pray too, because we know that worship is our weapon, and it does make a big difference. So, can you be praying for us with this? There's a great tech team and various other people that are